In this video, we take a look at sewing curved seams. Stay with me and I'll show you how. There are three kinds of curved seam. There's the convex seam, where the seam curves out towards the right side. There's a concave seam, where the seam curves in towards the wrong side. And of course there's joining one convex and one concave side together. You'll come across this when sewing princess seams. So let's get started. We'll begin with the convex curve. We place our fabrics right side together, pin it in place, and we stitch along the edge following the line of the curve, using a straight stitch. As we try to open the seam, we can see that we have all this extra bulk in the seam allowance. So we want to remove some of this bulk along the edge. We take our scissors and we cut out triangles about every centimetre or so, coming close to the seam line, but being careful not to cut into it. And now when we fold our seam right way out, there's a lot less bulk on the inside. We then press the seam open. I'm using my tailor's ham for a smooth curve. And now we have a neatly finished convex seam. Here it is from the right side and the wrong side. For our concave curve, we put right sides together, pin it in place, and we stitch along the edge following the curve, using a straight stitch. Now because we have less fabric in the seam allowance, it's hard to open a convex seam flat, so we need to add a little extra give into the seam allowance. So we take our scissors and we cut slits along the curve about every centimetre, coming close to the seam line, but being careful not to cut into it. That will make it easier to open the seam and press it. Now we have a neatly finished convex seam. Here's how it looks from the right side and the wrong side. If we want to sew a concave curve to a convex curve, we place the right sides together, finding the centre and pinning it in place. And now we want to line up our concave and convex edges. And to make that easier, we can snip a couple of notches into the seam allowance of the convex curve. This will help the concave edge open up and bend along the convex edge much easier. So we can pin it all in place. And we stitch along the edge following the curve using a straight stitch, making sure to keep those notches within the seam allowance. We cut notches into the seam allowance close to the seam line to make it easier to open and press. And we press the seam towards the concave side, which is how it naturally wants to lay. And now we have a neatly finished seam. Here's how it looks from the right side and the wrong side. I do have a little bit of puckering here. This is something to be aware of when sewing curved seams. Make sure there are no folds in your fabric as you're sewing. And that's how to sew curved seams.